The doctor's face went pale when he looked at the MRI results, and that's when I knew the 6 years I'd spent caring for my paralyzed wife had been built on a lie so monstrous it would destroy everything I thought I knew about love, sacrifice, and the woman I'd married. "Mr. Harrison," Dr. Patel said, his voice tight, "I need you to call the police, right now." I stood in that sterile hospital room, my hands still sticky from the lotion I'd used during Phoebe's morning massage, and felt the floor tilt beneath me. "What? Why would I?" "Please, just make the call. I'll explain everything, but we need law enforcement here immediately." Phoebe lay on the examination table, her eyes closed, breathing steady and peaceful. My wife of 8 years, paralyzed from the waist down for the last 6. The woman I'd bathed every morning, fed every meal, carried up and down stairs because our house wasn't wheelchair accessible. The woman who'd looked at me with tears streaming down her face the day after the accident, and whispered that she understood if I wanted to leave her. I never left. I quit my job as an architect, burned through our savings, took on freelance work I could do from home. I became her caregiver, her nurse, her everything. I learned to change catheters, prevent bed sores, administer medications. I reorganized our entire life around her needs. And now a doctor I'd never met before was telling me to call the police. "Dr. Patel, I don't understand." "The MRI shows no spinal damage," he said, his words coming fast now. "None. No nerve compression, no scarring, no injury of any kind. Your wife's spine is completely intact and functional. The room spun. That's impossible. The accident. Whatever accident occurred 6 years ago didn't damage her spinal cord. Mr. Harrison, I don't know how to say this gently, so I'll just say it. Your wife can walk. She's been able to walk this entire time." I grabbed the edge of the exam table to steady myself. "No, that's not... She wouldn't... The MRI doesn't lie. Neither does the nerve conduction study we ran. Her motor function is perfect. Her sensory pathways are intact. There is no physiological reason why this woman can't walk." Phoebe's eyes opened. She looked at me, and in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not fear, not surprise, just cold calculation. "Phoebe?" My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Phoebe, what's going on?" She didn't answer, just held my gaze with those blue eyes I'd loved for 8 years. Dr. Patel moved toward the door. "I'm getting security. Mr. Harrison, I strongly advise you to step away from the patient and call the authorities. What I'm looking at here is fraud, possibly multiple felonies." He left. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood there, staring at my wife, the woman I'd devoted 6 years to, the woman I'd sacrificed everything for. "How long have you known?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. Then a small smile touched her lips. "Known what?" "That you could walk." "Tom, you're being ridiculous. The doctor clearly made a mistake." "Don't." My voice came out harder than I'd ever spoken to her. "Don't lie to me. Not now. How long?" The smile faded. She looked at the ceiling. "Since the beginning." The room tilted again. I gripped the table harder. "What?" "I was never paralyzed, Tom. The accident was real. The car crash happened, but I wasn't hurt. Not like I said." My mind couldn't process what I was hearing. "Why would you?" "Because you were going to leave me." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. "I found the emails to that woman from your firm, Jessica. You were planning to divorce me, so I made sure you couldn't." I remembered those emails, a brief emotional affair that never went physical, that I'd ended before it started. I'd deleted everything, told Jessica I was committed to my marriage. That had been 6 years ago, right before the accident. "So you faked paralysis? For 6 years?" "I did what I had to do to keep you, and it worked, didn't it? You stayed. You took care of me. You proved you loved me." "I loved a lie." I stepped back from the table. "Everything I did, everything I gave up, was for your wife. Your commitment, your vows." She sat up now, swinging her legs over the side of the exam table with easy grace. "For better or worse, remember? In sickness and health?" I watched her legs move, legs I'd thought were dead, useless, legs I'd massaged every day to prevent atrophy, legs that worked perfectly. "You destroyed my career, my life, 6 years. Our marriage was worth it." She stood, and the sight of her standing on her own 2 feet after 6 years of wheelchair dependency made me want to vomit. "We can work through this, Tom. The doctor doesn't have to report anything. We can go home, pretend this never happened. I'm calling the police." I pulled out my phone. She moved fast, faster than someone who'd supposedly been immobile for 6 years should be able to move. She grabbed my wrist. "Don't, please." I did this for us. You did this for yourself. You're a liar and a fraud, and I want you out of my life. You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine. The MRI proves it. The medical records will show... Show what? That a doctor misdiagnosed me 6 years ago and I genuinely believed I was paralyzed? That I'm experiencing a miraculous recovery right now? There are documented cases of people recovering from paralysis spontaneously. I stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time in 6 years. This wasn't the woman I'd married. Or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. I don't care what you tell people, I said. I'm done. We're done. The door opened. Dr. Patel returned with 2 security guards and a police officer. The officer looked between us, his hand resting on his belt near his radio. I'm Officer Bennett. We got a call about a potential fraud situation? Phoebe's expression shifted instantly. Tears welled in her eyes. When she spoke, her voice trembled. Officer, thank God you're here. My husband, he's been so angry since we arrived. I don't know what's happening, but Dr. Patel is saying things that don't make sense. I've been paralyzed for 6 years. I can't just suddenly walk... Actually, you can? Dr. Patel held up a tablet displaying the MRI images. And you have been able to, based on these scans. There's no evidence of any spinal injury, past or present. The officer looked at Phebe, then at me. Sir, can you explain what's going on? I told him everything. The accident 6 years ago, my wife's sudden paralysis. The doctors who couldn't explain why she couldn't walk despite no visible spinal damage. The assumption that it was some kind of nerve trauma that didn't show on scans. The 6 years I'd spent as her full-time caregiver. And today, when we came in for her routine scan, Dr. Patel found no injury at all. I finished. My wife just admitted to me that she's been faking this entire time. The officer turned to Phebe. Ma'am, is that true? No, he's lying. I don't know why he's saying these things. I've been suffering for 6 years. This is a miracle. Then stand up, the officer said. I can't... You were standing when I walked in. Phoebe's tears stopped. Just stopped, like someone had flipped a switch. The trembling in her voice disappeared. Fine. Yes, I can walk, but it's not fraud. It's a medical mystery. Sometimes people recover. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come down to the station for questioning. Based on what I'm hearing, there may be grounds for fraud investigation. Did you receive any disability benefits during this time? Phoebe's face went white. Yes, Social Security disability. But that's because I was genuinely... Right now, the medical evidence suggests otherwise. That's federal fraud, ma'am. We'll need to sort this out downtown. They took her away in handcuffs. She looked at me as they let her out, and the hatred in her eyes was so pure it should have scared me. Instead, I just felt empty. Dr. Patel put a hand on my shoulder. Mr. Harrison, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I can refer you to a counselor if you need someone to talk to. This kind of deception, it's traumatic. I need to go home, I said. I need to think. He nodded and left me alone in the exam room. I stood there for a long time, my phone in my hand, trying to understand what had just happened. 6 years. 6 years of my life. Gone. Dedicated to a lie, to a woman who'd chosen manipulation over honesty, control over love. My phone rang. My sister, Emily. Tom? I just got the weirdest call from Phoebe's mother. She's saying Phebe was arrested? What's going on? I took a deep breath. It's a long story. Can you meet me at my house in an hour? Of course. Tom, are you okay? No, but I will be. I hung up and walked out of the hospital, leaving behind the ruins of the last 6 years. But as I drove home, one thought kept circling through my mind. Phebe had admitted she did this to keep me from leaving. She'd destroyed 6 years of my life as revenge for emails I'd sent to another woman. If she was willing to go that far, what else had she done? What else had she been lying about? By the time I reached home, I'd made a decision. I wasn't just going to divorce Phebe and move on. I was going to find out exactly how deep her deception went. And if she'd destroyed 6 years of my life, I was going to make sure she paid for every single day. The house felt different when I walked in alone. Usually, I'd be bringing Phebe back from appointments, carrying her from the car to her wheelchair, making sure she was comfortable before putting away our things. The routine had been carved into my bones after 6 years. Now I walked through the front door without any of that weight. Just me, in a house I'd redesigned around a lie. I saw the changes everywhere. The ramps I'd installed, the widened doorways, the modified bathroom with grab bars, and a roll-in shower I'd spent 3 months building. The chairlift on the stairs that had cost $8,000. The first-floor bedroom we'd converted because Phebe couldn't navigate stairs. Tens of thousands of dollars. Years of work, all for nothing. I sat on the couch, the low one I'd bought specifically so Phoebe could transfer from her wheelchair, and pulled out my laptop. If Phoebe had been lying about the paralysis, what else had she lied about? I needed to dig deeper, and I needed to do it before she made bail or her lawyer started covering tracks. First, I logged into our bank accounts. Phoebe had insisted on joint accounts after the accident. Easier for me to manage everything, she'd said. I'd never had reason to question it. Now I questioned everything. I started going through statements from the last 6 years, looking for anomalies. At first, everything seemed normal. Grocery deliveries, medical supplies, utility bills. Then I noticed something in her personal account, the one I rarely looked at because she'd said it was just for her small online business selling handmade jewelry. Monthly deposits. $3,000 every month for the last 6 years. Not from her jewelry sales. Those were irregular and much smaller. These deposits came from an account I didn't recognize, listed only as HLTH Benefits Corp. I opened a new browser tab and searched for the company. Nothing came up. No website, no corporate registry listing, nothing. A shell company, maybe? Or something else? I grabbed my phone and called Emily. She answered immediately. "I'm 10 minutes away. Are you okay?" "I need you to bring your laptop and your investigator friend. The one who helped you with the divorce." "Kenneth? Tom, what's going on?" "Phoebe's been lying about more than just the paralysis. I think she's been stealing money. I need help figuring out from where." Emily was quiet for a moment. "I'm calling Kenneth now. We'll both be there soon." She hung up. I went back to the bank statements, digging deeper. The deposits had started exactly 1 month after Phoebe's supposed accident. $3,000 a month for 72 months, $216,000 total. My stomach turned. That was almost $250,000. Where was it coming from? I heard a key in the lock. Emily came through the door, followed by a man I recognized from her divorce party 2 years ago. Kenneth Pierce, a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud. "Tom?" Emily hugged me. "I'm so sorry. This is insane." "It's going to get more insane." I showed them the laptop. "Look at these deposits." Kenneth sat down and started scrolling through the records, his expression growing more serious with each screen. "This is organized. Regular deposits from an unknown source for 6 years. Your wife has been receiving income you don't know about." "Can you trace it?" "I can try, but I'll need access to her personal accounts, emails, any financial documents you have." He looked at me seriously. "Tom, if she's been committing fraud, we need to be careful how we handle this. You're legally married to her. Depending on what we find, you could be implicated." "I didn't know anything about this." "I believe you, but we need to establish that clearly. I'm going to need you to write down everything that happened today at the hospital, with dates and times. Everything Phoebe said, everything the doctor said. We need documentation." Over the next 3 hours, Kenneth and Emily went through everything in the house while I wrote out my statement. They found Phoebe's private laptop hidden in a box labeled medical supplies in the bedroom closet. Kenneth cracked the password in 20 minutes. What he found made the fake paralysis look like a minor lie. "Tom," Kenneth's voice was tight, "you need to see this." I walked over. The laptop screen showed an email account I'd never seen before, registered to S. Harrison, but using a Gmail address I didn't recognize. Kenneth had pulled up emails from the last 6 years. The first one he showed me was from 5.5 years ago, addressed to someone named David Winters at a law firm in downtown Chicago. "Dear Mr. Winters, per our consultation, I'm moving forward with the disability claim. I understand I'll need to maintain consistent symptoms and medical documentation to support long-term benefits. Please advise on next steps regarding the additional claim against my husband's former employer for failure to provide adequate medical leave. Best, S. Harrison." I read it twice. She was planning legal action against my firm? Keep reading. Kenneth clicked to another email. This one was from David Winters back to Phoebe. "Mrs. Harrison, I've reviewed your case. While your husband's firm did provide adequate FMLA leave, we may have grounds for a discrimination claim based on disability. If you can maintain your current condition for at least 2 years, we can pursue a substantial settlement. My retainer is $15,000. Please let me know if you'd like to proceed." I felt sick. She was setting up a lawsuit. "Against your own firm," Emily said quietly. "The place you worked for 12 years. Kenneth showed me the next email. Phoebe had paid the retainer and moved forward with the lawsuit. 3 years of correspondence followed, documenting how Phoebe and her lawyer had built a case claiming my former employer had discriminated against her disability, created a hostile work environment that forced me to leave, and caused emotional distress that entitled her to compensation. The lawsuit had settled 2 years ago for $300,000. That's where the deposits came from, Kenneth said. She took the settlement, put it in a trust, and paid herself $3,000 a month. She probably told the lawyer it was structured that way for tax purposes. I sat down heavily. $300,000. She sued my own firm using a fake disability and pocketed the money without telling me. It gets worse. Kenneth clicked to another folder. She's been in contact with someone else, too. Emails going back 4 years to an address registered to a Martin Cole. He opened the emails. They weren't legal correspondence. They were personal. Intimate. I miss you, Phoebe had written 3 years ago. Tom is completely focused on taking care of me. He doesn't suspect anything. I can get away Tuesday afternoons when he goes to the grocery store. Meet me at the usual place? I read through the emails in a daze. Phoebe had been having an affair for 4 years with a man named Martin Cole, who lived 30 miles away in Oak Park. They'd been meeting regularly, sometimes at hotels, sometimes at his apartment, always when I was out running errands or dealing with freelance work, all while I'd believed she was paralyzed and housebound. How? I asked. How did she even leave the house? Emily pointed to another email from 2 years ago. She walks to the corner when you leave. Martin picks her up. They spend the afternoon together. She's back before you return. Kenneth pulled up Phoebe's text messages next. Hundreds of them between her and Martin, coordinating schedules, making plans, and in some of them, they talked about me. Tom is so gullible, Phoebe had written 6 months ago. He actually believes the massage therapy is helping. Sometimes I want to laugh when he's rubbing my legs, talking about keeping the muscles from atrophying. Martin's response. When are you going to tell him the truth? Why would I? I've got disability money, lawsuit settlement money, a caretaker who does everything for me, and you. This is the perfect life. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, it was getting dark. Somewhere in the city, Phoebe was probably in a police station, being questioned about fraud. She'd probably lawyered up immediately, was probably spinning some story about miraculous recovery and misunderstanding. She had no idea what I'd found. Kenneth, I said, turning around. I want to hire you officially. I want you to find out everything about Phoebe's finances, her relationship with Martin Cole, and what other lies she's been telling. Can you do that? Yes. But Tom, you need to understand. This is going to get ugly. Divorce, criminal charges, lawsuits. Phoebe's going to fight back hard. Good. I hope she does. Because I'm not the man she thinks I am anymore. The man who spent 6 years taking care of her. He's gone. And the man who's left wants justice. Emily touched my arm. Tom, I get that you're angry. I would be too. But please think carefully about how you want to proceed. Revenge can destroy you as much as it destroys her. This isn't revenge, I said. This is accountability. She committed fraud. She stole money. She lied to me for 6 years. I'm just making sure she faces consequences. Okay, Emily nodded. Then do it right. Document everything. Build an airtight case. And don't do anything that could be used against you later. Kenneth was already making notes. I'll need copies of everything we found today. I'll also need you to write down every conversation you remember with Phoebe about her condition, the accident, her medical care, anything that could establish she knowingly lied. I'll start tonight. They left around midnight. Emily made me promise to call her if I needed anything. Kenneth said he'd have a preliminary report within 48 hours. I spent the rest of the night going through Phoebe's laptop, finding more and more evidence of her deception. Emails to Martin about places they'd been together. Restaurants I'd never heard of. Trips to museums and parks I thought she couldn't visit. Photos they'd taken together. Phoebe standing, smiling, completely mobile. In one photo, they were at Navy Pier. Phoebe was wearing the dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. The dress she'd said was too difficult to put on, and asked if I'd return it. She'd worn it for him. By dawn, I'd compiled a list of 37 documented lies. 37 specific instances where Phoebe had claimed she couldn't do something because of her paralysis, when the evidence showed she absolutely could and did do those things, just not when I was around. I emailed everything to Kenneth, then finally allowed myself to sleep. I woke up 6 hours later to banging on the door. When I opened it, Phoebe's mother was standing there, red-faced and furious. "You bastard!" she spat. "You had my daughter arrested. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I kept my voice calm. I told the truth about her medical condition. She's been paralyzed for 6 years. This is some kind of mistake. It's not a mistake. Phebe admitted to me that she's been faking it, and I found evidence that she's been stealing money, committing fraud, and having an affair. Her mother's face went pale. That's absurd. You're making that up. I have emails, bank records, photographs. Your daughter has been lying to everyone for 6 years. I don't believe you. Then you're as much a fool as I was. I started to close the door. Phoebe's bond hearing is tomorrow. If you want to help her, hire a good criminal attorney. She's going to need one. I closed the door on her protests and went back to my laptop. Kenneth had already replied to my email. This is even worse than I thought. I'm pulling court records and financial documents today. We need to meet ASAP. Phebe posted bail that afternoon. Her mother had put up $50,000, according to the news alert on my phone. I immediately called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. Then I called an attorney, not the one who'd handled our will and estate planning, but a divorce attorney Emily recommended who specialized in high-conflict cases. Her name was Patricia Vance, and she agreed to see me that evening. Mr. Harrison, she said when we sat down in her office. Emily gave me the basics. This is potentially one of the most complicated cases I've seen. Your wife committed multiple frauds during your marriage, which normally would make property division fairly straightforward. But because you were married when she committed these acts, there are some complications. What kind of complications? The settlement money she received from your former employer. That's marital property by default, even though she hid it from you. In a divorce, you could be entitled to half. I don't want her dirty money. I understand, but strategically, claiming it gives us leverage. She'll fight to keep it, which means she'll be more willing to negotiate on other things you do want, like ensuring she can't claim any of your retirement accounts, the house, or future earnings. What about criminal charges? That's separate from the divorce, but will definitely impact it. If she's convicted of fraud, it strengthens our case that she shouldn't receive any marital assets. But the criminal case could take years. The divorce can move faster. I spent 3 hours with Patricia, going over every detail. By the end, we had a strategy. File for divorce immediately on grounds of fraud and adultery. Pursue criminal complaints for disability fraud, insurance fraud, and theft by deception. Document everything to support potential civil lawsuits to recover money she'd stolen or obtained through fraud. And most importantly, make sure Phebe knew that I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. Phebe came home 2 days after her arrest. I heard her key in the lock, the old key that no longer worked, and waited. She tried twice more, then knocked. I opened the door but kept the chain on. What do you want? This is my house. Let me in. Actually, it's my house. My name is on the deed. The mortgage is in my name. You want to come in? You can call your lawyer and schedule a time to collect your belongings. You can't keep me out of my own home. Watch me. I started to close the door. She shoved her hand against it. Tom, please. We need to talk about this. I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. I can explain everything. The paralysis, it was psychological. I genuinely believed I couldn't walk. And when the doctor showed me the MRI, it's like something broke free in my mind. It's a documented phenomenon. Stop lying. I found your laptop. I read the emails to your lawyer about setting up the disability fraud. I saw the messages with Martin Cole. I know about the affair, the fake outings, the settlement money you hid from me. I know everything, Phebe. Her expression hardened. You went through my private computer? In my house, which you've been living in under false pretenses for 6 years. We're married. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. That includes privacy. You gave up any right to privacy when you committed fraud. And we won't be married much longer. I filed for divorce this morning. You'll be served with papers in the next few days. She went very still. You filed for divorce. On grounds of fraud and adultery. My attorney is also helping me file criminal complaints about the disability fraud and the stolen settlement money. That settlement was mine. That settlement was obtained through fraud, using a fake disability. The company paid you $300,000 based on lies. I'm going to make sure they know that and pursue charges. You wouldn't. Watch me. Her face twisted into something ugly. You self-righteous son of a bitch. You think you're so noble, taking care of me all these years. You did it out of guilt. Guilt because you were going to leave me for that woman from your firm. You stayed because you felt obligated, not because you loved me. Maybe that's true, but I still stayed. I still took care of you. I gave up my career, my savings, 6 years of my life, and you repaid that by lying, cheating, and stealing from me. I kept our marriage together. No, you kept me trapped. There's a difference. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Fine. You want a divorce? You'll get one. But I'm going to take everything you have. The house, the retirement accounts, everything. By the time my lawyer is done with you, you'll wish you'd never found that MRI. Good luck with that. Criminal fraud tends to affect property division. We'll see. She turned and walked down the driveway to a car I didn't recognize. Martin's car, I realized. He was in the driver's seat watching me. I closed the door and called Patricia Vance. Phebe knows about the divorce. She's threatening to take everything. Let her try. We have documentation that she committed fraud throughout your marriage. Illinois is an equitable distribution state, which means the court considers conduct when dividing property. Fraud is absolutely relevant. She had someone drop her off. Martin Cole, the man she's been having an affair with. Good. Take photos if they come back. Document everything. The more evidence we have of her behavior, the stronger our case. Over the next 2 weeks, Kenneth worked on investigating Phoebe's background. What he found was worse than I'd imagined. The accident 6 years ago? Phebe had staged it. She'd driven her car into a ditch at low speed, called 911, and claimed she couldn't feel her legs. The police report showed minimal damage to the vehicle and no injuries beyond some bruising. But Phebe had been convincing. She'd cried, acted traumatized, insisted she couldn't move her legs. At the hospital, she'd maintained the act. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong with her spine, but sometimes trauma manifested in mysterious ways. They'd diagnosed her with conversion disorder, psychological paralysis. Except it wasn't psychological, it was calculated. Kenneth found emails from before the accident where Phebe had researched conversion disorder, paralysis symptoms, and disability benefits. She'd planned this for months, waiting for the right time to implement it. That right time had come when she discovered my emotional affair with Jessica. She researched everything, Kenneth told me over coffee at my house. How to fake paralysis convincingly, what symptoms to show, how long she'd need to maintain it to qualify for permanent disability benefits. She even consulted with that lawyer before the accident to make sure she could pursue a lawsuit after. This was premeditated. Absolutely, and there's more. I pulled financial records going back 10 years. Phoebe's been hiding money the entire time you've been married. She had a separate bank account you didn't know about, funded with cash from her jewelry business. That money, almost $60,000, she moved to an offshore account 3 months before the accident. Why offshore? Protection. If you ever filed for divorce, that money wouldn't be easily discoverable. She was planning her exit strategy before she even faked the paralysis. I sat back, trying to process this. So she wasn't trying to keep me. She was setting up a way to control me while protecting herself. Exactly. The paralysis gave her power in the relationship. You couldn't leave without looking like a monster who abandoned his disabled wife. She got to control your schedule, your finances, your life, and she had backup money hidden away in case things went south. What about Martin Cole? That's interesting. They met 4 years ago at a disability support group online. He's not disabled either. He was researching for a novel he's writing about disability fraud. You're kidding. I'm not. Apparently, Phebe opened up to him about her situation, thinking he was another person gaming the system. When he realized she was serious, instead of reporting her, he saw an opportunity. They started the affair shortly after. Has he been helping her commit fraud? Hard to prove, but probably. At minimum, he's been complicit. He knew she was faking paralysis and collecting disability benefits. That could make him an accessory. Can we charge him? Possibly. But focus on Phebe first. Once she's facing serious charges, she might flip on him to reduce her sentence. The divorce moved forward quickly. Phebe hired an expensive attorney, paid for by Martin, I learned later, who tried to paint me as a vengeful husband trying to destroy his sick wife. But Patricia destroyed that narrative with the MRI results, the emails, and the bank records. At our first mediation session, Phebe sat across from me with her lawyer, looking victimized and hurt. She'd even brought a wheelchair, though I noticed she walked from the car to the building just fine when she thought no one was watching. My client is willing to agree to a divorce, her lawyer said, but she's entitled to substantial compensation for the emotional trauma she suffered during this marriage, particularly given Mr. Harrison's threats to pursue criminal charges. Your client, Patricia replied coolly, is entitled to nothing. She committed fraud throughout the marriage, collected money through illegal means, and had an affair while pretending to be disabled. If anything, my client is entitled to compensation from her. The alleged fraud is unproven. It's proven by medical records, emails, and bank statements, all of which we'll be happy to present in open court, where the media will have a field day with a woman who faked paralysis for 6 years to control her husband. Phoebe's lawyer whispered something to her. Phebe shook her head violently. My client is prepared to fight this. Then we'll fight. Patricia slid a document across the table. This is a proposed settlement. Your client gets nothing from the marital assets. In exchange, my client agrees not to pursue civil action to recover the $300,000 she fraudulently obtained from his former employer. That's ridiculous. The alternative is we pursue full criminal prosecution for disability fraud, insurance fraud, theft by deception, and wire fraud. Based on the amounts involved and the duration of the fraud, your client is looking at potential federal charges with sentences of up to 20 years. Plus, my client will sue her in civil court for the return of all fraudulently obtained money, which, including the settlement, could total over $400,000. The mediation ended with no agreement. Phebe was confident her lawyer could convince a judge she'd been genuinely disabled and had experienced a miraculous recovery. She was wrong. 2 months later, we were in court for a divorce hearing. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Helen Rodriguez, reviewed all the evidence we'd submitted: the MRI scans, the emails planning the fraud, the photographs of Phebe walking and traveling while she'd claimed to be paralyzed, the bank records showing hidden settlement money. "Mrs. Harrison," the judge said, "I've reviewed everything here. Do you have any explanation for why medical scans show no spinal injury when you've collected disability benefits for 6 years?" Phoebe's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client experienced what her doctors believed was conversion disorder, psychological paralysis. It's a recognized medical condition. The recent MRI showing no physical damage doesn't mean she was faking. Counsel, I've read the emails your client sent to her attorney before the accident discussing exactly how to fake paralysis. I've seen the photographs of her standing at Navy Pier while she was supposed to be wheelchair-bound. I've reviewed the timeline of her settlement from Mr. Harrison's former employer, which she obtained while claiming disability and which she hid from her husband." The judge looked directly at Phebe. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm not a criminal court judge, so I can't rule on the criminal aspects of this case. But in the matter of the divorce and property division, I find that you committed fraud throughout this marriage. Under Illinois law, fraud is grounds for unequal property division." Phebe started crying. Fake tears, I was sure, but convincing ones. "Your Honor, please. I'm awarding Mr. Harrison sole ownership of the marital home, his retirement accounts, and his personal property. Mrs. Harrison, you are entitled to whatever money is currently in your personal accounts, excluding the settlement funds from Thompson and Associates, which you obtained through fraud and which Mr. Harrison may pursue through separate civil action." "Your Honor, that's everything." "That's the consequence of committing fraud, Mrs. Harrison. Consider yourself fortunate that I'm not holding you in contempt for wasting this court's time. Divorce granted. Bailiff, next case." We walked out of the courtroom. Phebe tried to approach me in the hallway, but Patricia stepped between us. "My client has no interest in speaking with you, Mrs. Harrison. Any further communication should go through attorneys. Tom, please." I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman who'd destroyed 6 years of my life, who'd stolen my career, my savings, my trust, who'd lied to my face every single day for 72 months. "I hope it was worth it," I said, "because you're going to spend the next few years in court fighting criminal charges and civil lawsuits, and when it's all over, you'll have nothing. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is not seeing who you really were before I married you." I walked away. Patricia drove me home, where Kenneth was waiting with his final report. "The prosecutor's office has agreed to pursue charges," he said. "Disability fraud, wire fraud, and theft. They're also looking at Martin Cole as an accessory. His novel about disability fraud? They think he might have been coaching Phebe the whole time." "When's the trial?" "Preliminary hearing is in 6 weeks. But Tom, I need to warn you. Phoebe's going to try to make you look bad. She's already talking to reporters, telling them you're a cruel husband who abandoned his disabled wife. Let her talk. The evidence speaks for itself. The preliminary hearing was a media circus. Phebe gave interviews claiming I was vindictive and cruel, and that she'd experienced a miraculous recovery, and I couldn't accept it because it meant I'd have to give up the sympathy I'd received for being her caretaker. But in court, the prosecutor methodically destroyed her story. He presented the emails, the bank records, the photographs. He called Dr. Patel, who testified that Phoebe's spine had never been damaged. He showed the video from Navy Pier that I'd found, showing Phebe walking freely just 6 months ago. The judge ordered Phebe to stand trial on all charges. 3 months later, the trial began. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery and watching as the prosecutor built an airtight case. Phoebe's lawyer tried to argue psychological paralysis, miraculous recovery, and misunderstanding. The jury didn't buy it. After 4 days of testimony, they convicted Phebe on all counts: disability fraud, wire fraud, and theft by deception. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. I waited until the courtroom cleared, then approached the prosecutor. "What's she looking at?" "Conservative estimate? 7 to 10 years?" The federal charges carry mandatory minimums, and the judge seemed pretty disturbed by the length and sophistication of the fraud. And Martin Cole? He's taking a plea deal, testifying against Phebe in exchange for reduced charges. Turns out he was more involved than we thought. He helped her set up the offshore accounts and coached her on maintaining the Paralysis Act. So she betrayed him too. People like Phebe always betray everyone eventually. It's what they do. I left the courthouse and drove to my house, now actually mine, with Phoebe's name officially removed from the deed. I'd spent the last 3 months renovating, removing all the accessibility modifications I'd installed for her fake disability. The ramps were gone. The doorways were restored to normal width. The modified bathroom was being converted back to standard layout. I was erasing every trace of the lie. Emily came over that evening with champagne. You won. I guess I did. You don't sound happy about it. I'm not unhappy. I'm just empty. 6 years of my life, gone. My career derailed. My savings depleted. My trust destroyed. Yes, Phoebe's going to prison. Yes, I got the house and kept my retirement, but I can't get those 6 years back. No, but you can build new years, the better ones. You're free now, Tom. You're really free. She was right. I was free. Free from Phoebe's lies, free from the burden of her fake disability, free from a marriage built on deception. But freedom felt heavier than I'd expected. Phoebe's sentencing was on a cold Tuesday morning in January, 7 months after that doctor had told me to call the police. I almost didn't go, but Kenneth convinced me I should be there to see it through. The courtroom was less crowded than it had been during the trial. Phoebe's mother was there, looking 20 years older than when this started. Martin Cole sat in the back, having already been sentenced to 18 months for accessory to fraud. A few reporters were scattered through the gallery, but the media had mostly moved on to newer scandals. Phoebe was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. She'd lost weight during the months of legal proceedings, and her hair had grown out, showing gray roots she'd always dyed before. She looked like what she was, a woman facing the consequences of her choices. The judge, the same one from the trial, reviewed the sentencing guidelines. Mrs. Harrison, you've been convicted of multiple counts of fraud spanning 6 years. During that time, you stole approximately $240,000 in disability benefits, obtained $300,000 through a fraudulent lawsuit, and destroyed your husband's career and savings while carrying on an affair. The pre-sentencing report indicates you've shown no remorse and continue to maintain you were genuinely disabled despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Phoebe's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client has suffered tremendous trauma during these proceedings. She's lost her marriage, her home, her reputation. She asks the court for leniency. Leniency for what? She committed a calculated, sophisticated fraud that lasted 6 years. She manipulated her husband, the medical system, the legal system, and the disability benefit system. She showed no mercy to any of her victims. Why should this court show her mercy? The judge looked directly at Phebe. Mrs. Harrison, you are sentenced to 8 years in federal prison on the wire fraud charges, to be served consecutively with 5 years for disability fraud and 3 years for theft. Total sentence, 16 years, with eligibility for parole after serving 12 years. In addition, you are ordered to pay restitution of $540,000 to cover the fraudulently obtained benefits and settlement, plus court costs. Phoebe started screaming. 16 years? For what? For trying to save my marriage? This is insane. Bailiff, remove her. They dragged Phoebe out, still screaming about injustice and persecution. Her mother was crying. The reporters were scribbling notes. I just sat there, feeling nothing. Outside the courthouse, Emily was waiting. 16 years. I didn't expect that. Neither did I. How do you feel? I don't know. Satisfied, I guess. She destroyed 6 years of my life. Now she'll spend more than twice that in prison. Seems fair. But it doesn't give me back what I lost. It doesn't restore my career or my savings or the time I wasted. It's just done. We walked to a nearby coffee shop and sat by the window. Outside, Chicago was going about its business, completely indifferent to the drama that had consumed my life for the last 7 months. What now? Emily asked. I don't know. I've been so focused on getting through this, the divorce, the trial, the sentencing, that I haven't thought about what comes next. You're 52 years old, Tom. You've got a lot of life left. I know, but I don't trust myself anymore. I was married to that woman for 8 years, took care of her for 6, and never saw through the lie. What does that say about my judgment? It says you're a decent person who believes someone you loved. That's not a character flaw. Feels like one. My phone rang. Kenneth. Tom, I wanted to give you a heads up. Martin Cole just contacted me. He wants to meet with you. Why? He says he has information you need to hear. About Phebe. I already know everything about Phebe. He says you don't. He says there's more. Information that didn't come out at trial because it wasn't relevant to the criminal charges, but that you should know. I looked at Emily, who was watching me curiously. Tell him I'll meet him tomorrow. Your office? I'll set it up. Martin Cole looked different than in the photographs I'd seen. Older, more worn down. Prison, even just 6 months of it, had taken a toll. Thank you for meeting me, he said as we sat down in Kenneth's conference room. Kenneth and Emily were there too, at my request. Make it quick. I have no interest in a long conversation. Fair enough. He pulled out a folder. I need to tell you something about Phebe, something that explains why she did what she did. I know why. She wanted control and money. It's more than that. He opened the folder and pushed it toward me. These are medical records from when Phebe was a teenager. She was in a psychiatric facility for 3 months when she was 17. I looked at the records. They showed Phebe had been admitted after a suicide attempt. Pills, followed by calling 911 herself. The diagnosis was borderline personality disorder with narcissistic features. The notes described her as manipulative, attention-seeking, and willing to harm herself to control others. Why are you showing me this? Because I think the paralysis thing wasn't the first time she pulled something like this. I started researching after I got arrested, trying to understand how I got sucked into her lies. I found her high school boyfriend, a guy named Andrew Stevens. He told me that Phebe faked a pregnancy to keep him from breaking up with her, maintained the lie for 4 months before he found out the truth. He pushed more papers toward me. I found her college roommate. She said Phebe faked having cancer to get out of exams and to manipulate their friend group. I found her first husband. Yeah, she was married before you. She told me she was divorced, but she was actually married to this guy for 2 years. She was married before? Never divorced. Just disappeared one day and moved to a different state. He eventually tracked her down and got a divorce in absentia. That was 5 years before she met you. I stared at the documents. Why didn't any of this come up during the investigation? Kenneth spoke up. Because we were focused on the disability fraud. These other incidents aren't crimes, they're just patterns of behavior. We wouldn't have uncovered them unless we were specifically looking. Why are you telling me this now? I asked Martin. Because I think you deserve to know who Phebe really is. She's not just someone who made a bad choice. She's been doing this her whole life. Lying, manipulating, creating fake crises to control people. The paralysis thing was just her most sophisticated scheme. And you got caught up in it. Yeah, I was stupid. I thought I understood her, that we were kindred spirits or something. Truth is, she was manipulating me the same way she manipulated you. Probably would have thrown me under the bus eventually, even if the fraud hadn't been discovered. I pushed the papers back toward him. I appreciate the information, but I'm done with Phebe. She's going to prison for 12 to 16 years. That chapter is closed. Is it, though? Because people like Phebe don't change. In 12 years, she'll get out. And she'll find someone new to manipulate, someone new to con, unless people know what she is. What are you suggesting? I'm writing a book about the whole thing. The fake paralysis, the fraud, the trial. Everything. But I wanted your permission before I included your story. I looked at Kenneth, who raised his eyebrows. It's up to you, Tom. The trial was public record, so technically he can write about it. But there's a difference between public record and active participation. I thought about it. The idea of my story being in a book, of people reading about how I'd been fooled for 6 years, was humiliating. But Martin was right about one thing. Phebe would get out eventually. And if no one knew what she was capable of, she'd just do it again to someone else. Fine, you can write the book, but I want to review anything that directly quotes me or describes my personal experiences. And I want a portion of the proceeds to go to organizations that help fraud victims. Deal. Martin extended his hand. I didn't shake it. One more thing. In your book, make sure people understand that victims of fraud aren't stupid or gullible. Phebe was sophisticated. She planned everything. She knew exactly what she was doing. Someone falling for her lies doesn't make them a fool. It makes her a criminal. I'll make that clear. I left Kenneth's office and walked to my car. The January air was bitter cold, but I barely felt it. My phone buzzed with a text from my old firm, Thompson and Associates. The managing partner wanted to meet for lunch. I hadn't talked to anyone from Thompson in 6 years, not since I'd left to take care of Phebe. When I'd resigned, I'd burned bridges, said some harsh things about the firm not being family-friendly. Now I wondered what they wanted. The lunch was at a steakhouse downtown. Richard Thompson, the managing partner, was already there when I arrived. He stood to shake my hand. "Tom, thank you for coming. I know this must be strange after so long. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I didn't leave on the best terms. You left under extraordinary circumstances, or what we thought were extraordinary circumstances. I followed the trial, Tom. I'm sorry for what you went through." "So you know Phebe lied about everything?" "Yes, including the lawsuit against us. We paid her $300,000 based on fraudulent claims. We're pursuing our own case to recover that money." "Good luck. She doesn't have any assets left." "So we understand. But that's not why I asked you to lunch." He pulled out a folder. "I want to offer you your job back." I stared at him. "What?" "You were one of our best architects before you left. You brought in major clients, designed award-winning buildings. We never wanted you to leave. And now that we understand you left because you were being manipulated by fraud, not because you chose to abandon your career, we want to make this right." "Richard, I've been out of architecture for 6 years. I'm not sure I can just jump back in." "We're not asking you to jump back in. We're offering you a consulting position to start. Work from home, gradually take on projects as you're comfortable. We'll even pay you back salary for the 6 years you were gone. Not full salary, but enough to compensate for the career impact Phoebe's fraud had on you." I couldn't speak. This was more than I'd dared hope for. "Why?" I finally asked. "Why would you do this?" "Because you're talented, and we lost you because of a crime someone committed against you. That's not right. And frankly, having you back would be good PR. The firm that stood by their architect who was victimized by disability fraud, that's a powerful story. I need time to think about it. Take all the time you need, but Tom, don't let Phebe steal more of your life. You've got decades of good work ahead of you. Don't waste them being bitter about the years she took." I left the restaurant in a daze, a job offer, a chance to restore my career. It was more than I'd expected, more than I'd thought possible. That evening, I sat in my renovated house and looked at the space I'd reclaimed. The ramps were gone. The modified bathroom was normal again. The downstairs bedroom had been converted back to my office. Every trace of the lie had been erased. But the memories remained. 6 years of waking up early to help Phebe with her morning routine. 6 years of planning every day around her needs. 6 years of sacrifice and devotion and love for someone who was laughing behind my back. Could I really just move on, accept a job offer, and pretend those years didn't happen? My phone rang. Emily. "Tom, I just heard from Kenneth. Richard Thompson offered you your job back?" "Yeah." "That's amazing. Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me feels like I don't deserve it." "Don't deserve it?" "Tom, you're a victim here. You lost 6 years of your career because someone committed a crime against you. Taking your job back isn't undeserved. It's justice." "Is it? Because it feels like charity." "It's not charity. It's a firm recognizing that they lost a valuable employee due to circumstances beyond anyone's control. They want you back because you're good at what you do, not because they pity you." I thought about Phoebe in her orange jumpsuit, screaming about injustice as they led her away to serve 16 years. I thought about the lie she'd built, the life she'd stolen from me. And I realized Emily was right. Taking my career back wasn't charity. It was reclaiming what had been taken from me. "I'm going to accept the job," I said. "Good. You deserve it." "Thanks, Em. One more thing. Remember how I said revenge would destroy you? I was wrong. You didn't seek revenge. You sought justice, and there's a big difference." After she hung up, I sat in my house, free of lies and modifications and false disability, and felt something I hadn't felt in 7 months. Hope. I went back to work at Thompson and Associates 3 months later. Richard had been right. It was a gradual return. I started with consulting on a small commercial project, just reviewing another architect's designs and offering suggestions. Then I took on a residential renovation, then a small office building. Within 6 months, I was back full-time, leading a team on a major downtown development project. It was like I'd never left, except I was more cautious now, more careful about trusting people, more aware of how easily lies could be built into the foundation of a relationship. The book Martin Cole wrote was published a year after Phoebe's sentencing. He called it The Long Con: How One Woman Faked Paralysis for 6 Years. It became a bestseller, partly because the story was so outrageous, partly because Martin was a decent writer who managed to make the technical details of disability fraud understandable to general readers. He sent me an advance copy. I read it in one sitting, simultaneously relieved and disturbed by how thorough he'd been. He'd interviewed doctors, prosecutors, disability rights advocates, and fraud experts. He'd documented not just Phoebe's crime, but the broader patterns of fraud she represented. And he'd been fair to me. He described me as a devoted husband who'd been victimized by sophisticated manipulation, not as a fool who should have known better. That meant more than I'd expected. The book's publication led to a flood of media attention. I gave a few interviews, mostly to raise awareness about the psychological impact of long-term fraud. The Today Show wanted me to appear, but I declined. I'd had enough of being defined by what Phoebe had done to me. 2 years after Phoebe's sentencing, I met someone. Her name was Jennifer, and she was a structural engineer I worked with on a project. We started as colleagues, became friends, and eventually started dating. She knew my story. Everyone did by that point. But she didn't treat me like a victim. She treated me like a person who'd survived something awful and come out stronger. I'm probably going to be paranoid, I told her on our 5th date. I'm going to question everything. I'm going to have trust issues. You should know that going in. I have trust issues too, she said. My ex-husband cheated on me with my sister, so we're both damaged. Might as well be damaged together. We got married a year later. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Emily was my best man, or best woman, technically. She cried during the vows, which made me cry, which made Jennifer cry. Happy tears, Emily said afterward. You deserve this, Tom. You deserve happiness. 3 years after Phoebe's sentencing, I received a letter from her. It was sent through her lawyer, and Kenneth advised me not to respond, but I read it anyway. Dear Tom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say something. I've been in therapy for 3 years now, real therapy, not the kind I pretended to need. I've been diagnosed with several personality disorders, and I'm finally understanding why I did what I did. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now that what I did was wrong. Not just wrong, evil. I destroyed 6 years of your life because I was afraid of being alone. That's inexcusable. You were a good husband to me, better than I deserved. I hope you're happy now. I hope you've moved on. I hope you never think about me. Sincerely, Phoebe. I showed the letter to Jennifer that evening. She read it carefully, then handed it back. What are you going to do? Nothing. There's nothing to do. She's serving her time. I've moved on. This is just her trying to feel better about herself. Do you believe she means it? The therapy and understanding? I don't know. Maybe. But it doesn't matter. Even if she's genuinely changed, it doesn't undo what she did. She doesn't get absolution just because she's sorry now. Jennifer nodded. That's fair. I threw the letter away and went back to living my life. 5 years after Phoebe's sentencing, the anniversary passed without me even noticing. I was too busy with work, with my marriage, with building a new life that had nothing to do with the old one. But late that night, after Jennifer had gone to bed, I sat in my home office and thought about that day at the hospital. The day Dr. Patel told me to call the police, the day everything shattered. If I could go back and change anything, would I? Would I have paid more attention to warning signs? Would I have questioned Phoebe's paralysis earlier? Would I have never married her in the first place? But then I thought about Jennifer, about the career I'd rebuilt, about the life I had now. If Phoebe hadn't done what she did, I wouldn't be here. I'd still be in that marriage, probably, still caring for someone who didn't need care, still living a lie without knowing it. Phoebe's crime had freed me, in the cruelest way possible, but freed me nonetheless. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Thinking about you tonight. I know what anniversary it is, even if you're pretending not to. You okay? I texted back. I'm good, really. Thanks for checking. You've come a long way, big brother. I'm proud of you. Thanks, Em. I put the phone away and went to bed, where Jennifer was already asleep. She stirred when I climbed in, automatically moving closer to me. I put my arm around her and felt something I'd thought I'd never feel again after Phoebe. Trust. Not blind trust. Not the naive belief that nothing bad could happen, but the earned trust that comes from being with someone honest, someone real, someone who showed you who they were from the beginning and never wavered. 10 years after Phoebe's sentencing, I got word that she was eligible for parole. Kenneth called to tell me, explaining that she'd been a model prisoner and had completed multiple rehabilitation programs. Do you want to submit a statement to the parole board? He asked. What would I say? How her crime affected you. Why you believe she should or shouldn't be released. I thought about it. No, I have nothing to say to them. Phoebe served 12 years. That's what the judge said she had to do. If she's met the requirements for parole, that's between her and the state. You don't care if she gets out? I care that she stays away from me, but whether she's in prison or out doesn't really matter anymore. She's not part of my life. She hasn't been for a decade. Phoebe was granted parole 3 months later. I saw a brief news article about it. Woman who faked paralysis released after 12 years. The article mentioned she'd found work at a nonprofit that helped former inmates transition back to society. There was a quote from her. "I want to spend the rest of my life making amends for what I did. I can't give back the years I stole, but I can try to be a better person going forward." Maybe she meant it. Maybe 12 years in prison had actually changed her. Or maybe she was still the same person, just better at hiding it. I didn't care enough to find out. The final piece of Phoebe's story came 2 years after her release, 14 years after the lie had been exposed. Kenneth called me at work. "Tom, I thought you should know. Phoebe was arrested again. Fraud charges. She was working at that nonprofit and apparently embezzled about $80,000 over 2 years." I wasn't surprised. Did she go back to prison? Sentencing is next month. Given her prior conviction and the fact that she was on parole, she's looking at another 10 years minimum. So she hasn't changed at all? Apparently not. Some people just can't help themselves. Anyway, I wanted you to know, and I wanted to tell you that you were right. About what? About moving on. You could have spent the last 14 years obsessed with Phoebe, with getting revenge, with making sure she paid for every day she stole from you. Instead, you rebuilt your life. You're successful, you're happy, you're married. And Phoebe? She's going back to prison because she couldn't stop being who she is. After Kenneth hung up, I sat at my desk and thought about karma, justice, and revenge. I'd gotten all three in the end. Not because I'd pursued Phoebe relentlessly, but because I'd simply lived well while she'd continued to self-destruct. That evening, I told Jennifer about Phoebe's rearrest. She shook her head. 14 years later, and she's still committing fraud. Some people never learn. No, they don't. Are you okay? I know you said you'd moved on, but hearing about her has to bring up some feelings. It does, but they're not the feelings I expected. I thought I'd feel angry or vindicated. Instead, I just feel sad. Sad that someone could be given a second chance and waste it. Sad that she'll probably spend the rest of her life in and out of prison. Sad that she's so broken she can't fix herself even when she tries. That's growth, Jennifer said. The fact that you can feel compassion for someone who hurt you so badly, that means you've truly moved on. Maybe. Or maybe I just finally accepted that Phoebe's problems are Phoebe's problems. They're not mine anymore. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the 16 years since that doctor told me to call the police. 16 years of divorce, trials, rebuilding, healing, and finally thriving. Phoebe had stolen 6 years of my life, but I'd built 16 years of a better life in response. In the end, that was the best revenge of all. Not destroying her, she'd done that to herself, but living well, building something real. Loving someone honest, creating a life that had nothing to do with the lies she'd built. The next morning, I woke up next to Jennifer in the house I'd bought after selling the old one, started coffee in the kitchen that held no modifications or reminders of Phoebe, and drove to work where I was leading a team designing a children's hospital that would serve thousands of kids over the coming decades. And Phoebe? She was heading back to prison to serve another decade for crimes she couldn't stop committing. I won, not because I destroyed her, but because I survived her and built something better. That was the only victory that mattered.